Welcome back, Honors. Okay, yeah. I told you for this flip that I would start right here, okay? We were talking about words, kind of like little vocab terms you need to know before we can really get into the thing that makes Rome, Rome, right? We got to talk about Roman government, social structure, and things like that, and how they're different drastically from that of Greece. So the big words you need to know are republic, which is a government that is ruled a chosen by the people. A government ruled. I think it's supposed to say a government ruled by people, chosen by the people, right? So the republic idea, so before anybody tells you a big fat lie, our government is a merging of a republic and a democracy. We're a democratic republic, okay? The big thing about a democratic republic, we choose our electors, and then our electors actually choose the people, not necessarily, well, some of the parts of them are chosen above them. We'll discuss this a little bit more as time goes on, because being honors kids, you need to be able to delineate the difference in like what parts we borrowed from Greece, what parts we borrowed from Rome, right? Sorry. There's like no Dunkin' Donuts in North Carolina, so I'm kind of addicted in a lot of ways, as y'all can tell with the marbles and whatnot. So next thing are the consuls, right? The consuls are either one of two elected chief officials of Rome. So if you hear me say so-and-so is elected as a consul, that's an important aspect because it means that they're one of the leaders of the Roman government. So there we go. The next one is a dictator, right? A dictator is a ruler that is only brought in during a time of war, and then they're supposed to step down after that war was over. Really quickly again, what's the premier dictator that Romans use? Kind of like a mythological type dictator. Anybody? Very nice job, Nick Maslin. That is right. Cincinnatus, right? Cincinnatus is the big guy. I heard you over there too, Crystal Wynn. Anyway, next guy, or set of guys, and also saying that is completely legitimate because women were not allowed to participate in politics in Rome, was the Senate, right? The Senate is the supreme council or highest governing body of Rome. Now, really quickly, just so you guys know going forward, when the Senate was originally established, it had a select few elected members, but as time went on to incorporate the larger growing population of their expansion, they began to add more and more senators based on the citizens that they were adding. However, this is going to get really out of hand, and at one point before Augustus comes in, which we will talk about, and he is the man, there were 900 of them, all right? So write down 900 senators. 900. That's too many, okay? So let's keep going, though. Next part. Write this down in all capital letters. It should take up like the bulk of your page, okay? Because this is one of the most important aspects of Rome culturally as well as historically. Now, S-P-Q-R. That right there are the four letters that represent everything that Rome holds dear to their heart, okay? So they hold it so dear to their heart that it's still on every single manhole cover in Rome and Italy. So this right here is a manhole cover. Ignore the little cigarette butt, but like it's not mine, I swear. Now that's SPQR. It's even on top of there like this is Rome. SPQR is Rome. Some soldiers would have it tattooed on them. It was on their original flag. SPQR, very important. And what it means is Senatus. There's supposed to be an O in there. Senatus Populus Romanum, right? And in Latin, that means the Roman Senate and people, okay? So Rome is all about the ideas that they are ruled over by their people, okay? The people rule over Rome, not a tyrannical government. Let's keep on going, though. Now, before we go any further, one thing you need to understand really fast is just kind of what like Roman law is. So, the 12 tables, also usually referred to as Roman law, was a set of civil laws that govern the daily lives of Romans. They pertain to a lot of different things like don't accuse or abuse anybody else's slaves, don't try to strip property from anyone that's undeserving, etc., 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 etc. There's like a really weird hair action going on right here. I need the wrong side. There we go. So, a lot of different things. We'll talk about some of the funny ones tomorrow a little bit, but they're 9 times out of 10 referred to as Roman law. So, there was really other cool thing you need to know. You can put a star next to this. There was actually no written constitution of Rome setting down the parameters or the setup of the Roman government. That is what our Constitution today does. The Constitution, as outlined by James Madison, sets up our 3-branch electoral government setup, right? The big thing about it is that actually James Madison really just kind of ripped off Roman government and stole it the entire time. This little hair is really bothering me. You see this thing? There it is. All right. Boom. Now it's gone. All right. So, the government has no written constitution. In our constitution, it sets up our legislative, executive, and judicial branches, right? And it talks about the checks and balances and governing powers that they hold over top of one another. However, Rome never had this. Rome actually had a set of traditions. It was just a system of adopted beliefs, right? Well, the Senate's always been there. Well, the dictators always come in during a time of Rome, or during a time of war. Well, the consuls have always been in charge of the Senate, right? This is going to prove very difficult for them going forward as their population begins to grow, all right? Now, the next thing we got to talk about are their 2 societal classes. They have 2 different social classes. They've got the patricians and the plebeians, right? The patricians, what I like to do a lot of times whenever you see like stereotypical little stupid things in like cartoons and stuff, where like rich, fancy people and how they speak, they always stick their pinky out, right? And they're like, ooh, like, and like make stupid little goofy noises like that. So I always go, patricians. All right, anyway, now, so patricians are the wealthy, landowning, ruling class, right? They led the military, they worked in the Senate, and the only ones who actually studied or knew Roman law or could even read it were the patricians. Fun fact about the patricians really quick, this is how patricians dined. Interesting idea about Rome really quickly. As you can see, there are women present at these banquets, right? That's actually an Etruscan belief. That's another thing they adopted from the Etruscans. The Etruscans actually coveted women much more fiercely, right? They actually believed that women were essential to society, and they also believed that women should have, like, men doted upon them in certain ways, right? So women were allowed to dine with men at very, very large social gatherings. So this was something very unique to Rome that was very different from Greece, because as we know, women's rights in Greece were very atrocious. And then also the other neat thing about Romans is that they also ate laying down, but they ate laying down on their stomachs, which I always thought was really odd, right? So anyway, well, let's keep going. So plebeians, though, also known as the common people, shortened up, you can say plebes or plebs, right? Because the word plebe, P-L-E-B, in Latin actually means, write this down, actually means the masses, all right? Ooh. So if you wanted to like insult someone in our modern day era, you can call them a plebe, right? And a plebe kind of just means that they're being just a regular, no good piece of bleh in society, right? So plebes are typically in Roman society that there were farmers, soldiers, craft workers, and merchants, okay? They could hold those 4 jobs. Now, were there a lot of other jobs other than that? Not particularly, but it's good to understand that that's really the only jobs that they were allowed to hold. So, the next thing, though, is that they had a voice in their government. Were they allowed to vote? Yes. Were they allowed to participate in their government? To an extent. Were they allowed to hold office? No. Okay, write that down. Not allowed to hold office, and they also paid 70% of the taxes, right? So this is a little ridiculous. Here's the other crazy part about it. What percentage, write this down, what percentage of Roman population do you think were plebes? I hear a lot of guesses. Adam Rennie, I heard you say like 80, right? And then I heard Olivia, heard you say like 75. Then I heard Justin say like 6. Well, Justin, you need to get your life together because that's a really bad guess. Anyway, now, so actually it's 95. 95%. 95% of Roman society was actually represented by the plebes. Now, last thing, slaves, they were at the very bottom of society. Now, some of you are like, well, what about women? Where do women fall into this thing? Well, women actually were considered almost like a different social class, right? Well, women were allowed to do a lot of different things, but one of the really interesting part about Roman women was they controlled everything that went on in their house. They controlled the finances, they controlled everything. They even said, like, that was their domain, right? Was they were allowed to literally dictate anything that happened inside their homes, right? I also believe later on as time advanced that women were allowed to inherit property. I need to look that up, though. Don't quote me on that. So slaves also were at the very, very bottom of society. Now, this is another thing that honors kids need to understand. Slaves in Rome, very different from slaves in Greece, okay? Slaves in Greece, like i.e. Spartans, Athenians, they were actually captured, conquered people, much like they were in Rome, but usually they were used to do very, very menial, laborious tasks that most other Romans or most other Greeks didn't want to do, like the Spartans and their helots, right? Well, the thing about Roman slaves, they had slaves for everything. They had slaves for all kinds of different things. Like, for example, when the Romans finally took over Macedonia and Greece after the Hellenistic Empire fell, one of the really interesting things about that was that they actually, when they enslaved the Greeks, they brought them into their homes and used them as teachers and tutors for their children. So that's a really interesting thing. And then also sometimes slaves would actually begin to kind of adopt the lifestyle of the family that they were with and actually believe that they were a part of it, right? There were some slaves that were actually treated very equitably in the Roman Empire. There were also some that were treated very terribly. Let's not delineate that, because some were forced to fight each other to the death as entertainment, right? So I'm just saying, like, they're very different jobs and occupations for slaves in the Roman Empire. We'll talk more about that as time goes on. Some of them were even paid, and some of them even bought their way to freedom, which was really interesting. However, they weren't allowed to be citizens after that. By the way, these two social classes represent Roman citizens. The conquered areas that weren't allowed to be Roman citizens were not considered patricians or plebes. They were just considered conquered people, right? They couldn't do anything. So, next thing. Oh, wait, hold on. The Sports Center's got the score from the Golden State Phillies game, or Sixers game up. Ugh, God, why is Steph Curry so good? God, that was a rough game. All right, anyway, now, last thing we got to understand, though, really quick, when we're talking about social classes in Rome, we got to understand the fact that the patricians were inherently, and should have been, actually afraid of the plebes a little bit. And the reason why we're talking about this is because you got to understand how this is going to affect the development of Roman society and kind of just of Roman cultural things, right? The patricians were inherently afraid of plebes, but the plebes just didn't know it, right? The plebes had no idea that the patricians had any type of fear of them. The plebes had very few rights, but were actually kept happy because the patricians wanted to avoid what they called the Roman mob, right? Well, if you think about it, if 95% of your society is paying the bulk of its taxes and doing all of the work, at some point they're going to realize that this is really screwed up. And if they get enough sticks and rocks together, they can potentially take you over, right? So what do you think the patricians are going to do to try and keep the plebes happy? Anybody? I heard you over there, Von Hoot and Sam Smile. They're going to build entertainment centers, right? One of them, and the first one, and the most popular one. Some of you are like, oh, the Colosseum. No! No, all right? The Colosseum wasn't built until much, much later. This bad boy, actually, was built very early on. This is the Circus Maximus, right? The Circus Maximus actually, so if Palatine Hill is up here, right, which is where the Roman government, the dictators and the higher government officials live, Palatine Hill up here, as in palace, right, Palatine, right down below it, was the Circus Maximus, right? The Circus Maximus is considered more of an epicenter of Roman culture than the Colosseum was because, like I said, the Colosseum was actually built much, much later, right? So the Circus Maximus was a chariot racing rink, right? That was the most popular sport for Romans, okay? Now, not to say that gladiator fights didn't happen here, because they did, right? Actually, usually as, like, pre-race activities, like the kind of like, like an opening act in concert, right? So usually before the Circus Maximus races would actually happen, they would have small gladiatorial battles on the inside of the Circus Maximus, on the inner rinks, to try and keep the people entertained between races, okay? There was actually one guy, apparently, who won like 1,500 different races and was immortalized with a statue on the inside of this thing. So, very, very cool stuff. I've always thought the Circus Maximus was very, very neat. And also so neat that I almost cried like a baby when I stood inside of it. So this is me actually standing in the ruins of the Circus Maximus. This is one of the towers that was originally there. As you can see, all of the old school pillars and everything. Oh my God, look, how sad is that? So the pillars have been knocked down and things like that throughout the years. You can see all of the remaining white marble and the pristine. This is why we believe it was such a nice area, because look at that marble. Look at how like it's never got like it's still pristine white, right? So a lot of this has to do with the fact though that stone thieves actually stole most of it, and when they were trying to rebuild a lot of the churches inside of Rome after the fall of Rome, because the Catholic Church actually was expanding during the fall of Rome, they were rebuilding these churches with marble from these Roman art, like these Roman centers and artifacts. That's why the Colosseum looks the way that it does. So, but as you can see, the bad boy is 1/4 of a mile long. It's huge, right? And this is me actually standing down in it. And this is my finger on the camera lens because I'm an idiot. And this is this random girl. This is like, so check this out. So this is the center right here, and the races would actually happen all around the edge. And you can see where some of the stands used to be over here. So, and this girl, I think, thought I was taking a picture of her at the time, which I wasn't, so she needs to get over herself. And then the last one is me standing on the actual track itself. That right there, that's Palatine Hill. That's where the emperors actually built their palace, because that's where they wanted to be able to see the chariot races from their windows, right? So cool, such a neat little thing that not a lot of people know about. So the Circus Maximus, right? There's a lot of really, really neat things, but I really enjoy this stuff, as you can tell. Very good job today. We will talk tomorrow about the struggle of the orders and how Roman government was reformed, and I get to use my whiteboard, so I can't wait. But I will see you guys then, Honors, all right? Have a good rest of your weekend.